the libertarian appeal
Hmm.
of real assets like gold whose essential value was not set by a monetary committee,
Yeah.
right? Bitcoin had some of that similar appeal that was outside its intrinsic value did not, or its value did not lie outside, its value lay outside central mechanistic control,
Yeah.
right? Um, now you know that's not the case. Now you know that
Perhaps it's not the case.
what was supposed to be the lifeblood of a libertarian future economy
Yeah.
and this anarcho-communist utopia
Yeah.
potentially has something, or almost definitely has something to do with the most oligarchic, shadowy intelligence-like structures,
Yeah.
which is pretty freaky.
It is pretty freaky. And I mean, amidst all this, you got to shout out the Alex Jones of the world. You got to shout out all the right wing Skzos. Because since the 90s, like people like this have been talking about the Bohemian Grove. Since the early 2000s, they've been talking about the Illuminati. And
Bro, for a second, tell for the benefit of the audience, what is a Bohemian Grove?
the Bohemian Grove was basically like a club in California where some very, very rich and powerful and elites of the world gather together for like a festival.
And we're talking like George Bush type.
Yeah, yeah, we're talking about some really, really high level operators. They basically go there and it's like a weekend long ritual where they're burning like effigies and like massive owls and
Like proper pagan rituals, basically.
yeah, some pretty intense pagan rituals. I mean, we can speculate on what goes on in those places, and some of the accounts are pretty grim.
After everything that's come out in the Epstein files,
Yeah.
with like the ritual sacrifice and all the occult and
Yeah.
orgies and God knows what. I mean, we might be speculating what happened, particularly at Bohemian Grove, but
Yeah.
like it is a lot easier to now imagine what was happening.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I find it really, really fascinating, even that, even with Pizzagate. Now, Pizzagate, like, bro, if you were there, like, if you were keeping up with Pizzagate when it was like releasing and stuff, like, I remember I was a young Skzos. I'm like, bro, this is crazy.
You're a
And then
young
it was,
schizo.
yeah, I was a young Skzos. I'm like, bro, this is fucking real. This is crazy. Red pill moment. But and then it got largely discredited. It was like, there's this QAnon adjacent, low status conspiracy to believe in.
And now we also find out that that QAnon entire network is a Jeffrey Epstein created thing,
Yeah.
because Jeffrey Epstein is meeting with the founder of 4chan
Yeah,
right
to
before
create
he.
Flash Paul.
Exactly.
He's creating Flash Paul. So the depths of the psyops happening are pretty insane. But coming back to it, like with Pizzagate, it's like it's not inconceivable now. It's like with the Epstein stuff that we do have some proof for. Is it impossible that you have a cabal of pedophiles and stuff? Absolutely not.
Bro, the thing is, that stuff, the Pizzagate stuff, for anyone who's looked into it, is so unbelievably dark
Yeah.
that at some point, even though you kind of know it's real, it's still hard to believe.
Yeah.
Like if there's that picture of a baby's foot on a chopping block,
Yeah.
right? In these Epstein files.
Yeah.
And now, even though I know factually all of this stuff happened, it's still hard to believe.
Yeah.
Because you see depravity, you see debauchery. We've all come across at some point in our life people doing horrible, disgusting things. But this has taken it to a level where it just stays so unbelievable.
I agree with you with a caveat. I don't think this is a newfound phenomena. I think if you even go back to the times of the Canaanites or the
100%
Phoenicians
not
and
true.
stuff,
Yeah.
these guys were worshipping Moloch back then. There's no shortage of actual documented rituals where there was child burning, where was child sacrifice, all this stuff, and this narrative that they've the powers that be, secular ideology have placed in this world, that the place is fundamentally, the world is not religious. On the highest levels there isn't like cult pagan stuff happening, or the discrediting of religion. But when you look at it on the highest echelons, right, these seem to be deeply spiritual religious things, even though they are obviously
They're
evil
dark,
things,
yeah.
they're dark, but these people are also subscribing to some sort of spirituality to be doing these things. Even the
What do you think the psychology behind this is on a very human level?
Uh.
Where do you think that they look at the rest of the world and say that, oh, these are like peasants, for them are like the mass fates, the Abrahamic fates, and we're above this?
Yeah.
We're gonna like return to whatever these old gods are, we're gonna carry out these. So is it like a psychological thing on one level where they're um, placing themselves on a higher plane by following these ancient rites and rituals that no one else does?
Yeah.
Or so do you think there's something intrinsic and class-based about it? Like what's going on there? Why is it just these upper echelons involved in
Man,
this?
from what I think, right, and based upon like, bro, this is a rabbit hole that I don't think anyone can go down deep enough because there's so much historical material regarding this. But I don't even necessarily think that, of course, there's a class element to it, but I don't think it's class based. What I mean by that is that even if you went back to the time of the Romans or the Greeks and stuff, right, heresies were always a thing. There has been this strain of ideology that starts in Babylon that eventually gets inherited by, Kabbalah to a certain degree and
Yeah,
all these
yeah,
things,
yeah.
where not to single out any one religion or race, but there is the primordial devilish tradition that humanity has been passing
And
down
you
since
see
the beginning.
Epstein particularly reference Kabbalah as well.
Yeah.
And claim it.
Yeah, look,
And
I don't look. I don't understand Kabbalah. I don't know what it is. I have a limited understanding of what it is, but and I don't want to mischaracterize it either. But you know how there is a primordial tradition of good that we people of the book we believe, like
there's a good and evil.
there's a
There's a dualism, there's a separation there.
yeah. I don't think it is far-fetched to believe that there is a primordial evil, a Luciferian force that has always been in this planet, and it is a non-humanistic intelligence that has been latched on to different cultures, different peoples and stuff. It comes down, it's like I'm getting a bit Landian with this, but I do subscribe to the idea that there are non-human intelligence out there that are
hijacking faith.
hijacking psyches and stuff. Like another rabbit hole.
But even like the idea that, for example, some Kabbalah adjacent integrationist ideas say, which is you need to descend into evil and into sin in order to integrate your darker self.
I don't think that. I mean, look, that's a very specific Frankist school that believes, and like I think it's Sabbatai, Zevi, and there's Thomas Frank who had this. I don't even think that is definitely a strain there where it's like it's kind of proto-accelerationism.
So I'm not saying the people who do all of this unbelievably dark stuff, which is unconscionable to any human being, any normal human being. Like even the worst person is not doing this.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So people doing that, yet they still talk about things in grand moral frameworks, yet they still talk about miracles. Epstein is talking about miracles in his Human Life is a Miracle in his interview with Steve Bannon, right? In order to keep up this, what seems like a contradiction to me and to most people, you may have that Sabbatean element of I've descended into evil in order to.
Yeah, there is an element of that, like in order to.
Because how else do you justify it?
In order to bring about the Messiah, we need to plunge the world into sin, and only through sin will the Savior come to cleanse us of our sins. That's kind of what the Sabbateans and what the Frankists.
Yeah, and I'm like very like ankle deep. I'm like I have a very shallow understanding of this. Like if anyone wants to enlighten us, like go ahead.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
It's just if you're a noticer, bro, it's hard to ignore.
Definitely, it's hard to ignore. That being said, I do think that there's something supernatural about what's going on with all
100%.
And another thought that comes to my mind is that how
this is not an ordinary evil.
This is not an ordinary evil, especially in regards to the age of Aquarius, right? Remember we were talking about the age of Aquarius, about how the Aquarian psychology will come in and wash in and synthesize all of this unintelligible information. I feel like some of this, what is happening in the world, is kind of representing that a little bit, where a lot of like we've been saying, child sacrifice and all these evil acts, they're not new. They have always been there. But how the Aquarian water bearer pours water over the system, synthesizes it, makes things very, very apparent, and there's a evolution in the human psyche. I think this is part of that. I think it's the intentional revealing to the public.
That's what I was just going to say, dude. Why are they? these kinds of intelligence superstructures fight tooth and nail against transparency. They never let things out. And to the point that whenever there's a high-profile political assassination, there's only one thing you know for sure, that you will never know for sure who actually killed this person.
Yeah.
Right? There's never going to be a disclosure.
Yeah.
Why would they reveal all of this? This is more damning than some rogue intelligence operative killed JFK, for example.
Yeah. Look, so there's one side of the spectrum that says that, this is to pressure Trump into making a move on Iran or something like that, but I don't entirely subscribe to this line of thinking. What I do think is happening is that, the more you deject the public, the more you deject the collective psyche, and the less action that's taken against some of these sins, some of these evil acts, right? That will break the spirit of a lot of people.
So
Maybe
do you
we
think,
come to a
look,
place where it's like, bro, look at all this evil in the world, and you can't do anything about it. Where it's like, it's to a certain degree, it's to psychologically break people.
and
I don't think they want to even be subtle about the control, the level of control that's actually being
so
operated.
therefore, there are the terrestrial secular explanations of, for example, this was revealed by Peter Thiel adjacent little tech guys
Yeah,
to uproot the old guard,
yeah,
delegitimate them,
yeah,
and complete their takeover of whatever apparatus is. So the idea being that there's sides in the international establishment, and this is one
Absolutely.
side
Yeah.
ousting the other.
Yeah.
And there may be truth to that. This may be completely real.
yeah.
But ultimately, to me, this level of depravity being revealed to the public voluntarily, I agree with you completely. This is like, this is like the spiritual war shit.
It's a spiritual war.
This is
telling
this is
peop-
supernatural. This is not an
Yeah.
ordinary disclosure.
Yeah,
Like,
and you bring up an interesting point where even the factionalism on the international elite, because I read stuff that, even with Epstein, uh, he was in with the internationalist order more, which is like
Exactly.
the Obamas and the Clintons and the Soros of the world. And the actual people who wanted him dead more than anything is the other faction of the international elite, which is more represented by the Trumps and the Netanyahus of the world.
look at how Steve Bannon talks to him in the interview. The split could not be clearer.
Yeah.
The lobbies.
Yeah. So, and you see this divide even with, like, let's say the Charles Koch and the George Soros, or, a Peter Thiel and a George Soros. So I think definitely this is not to say that one side is better than the other and stuff. Epstein particularly was more involved in that internationalist kind of rules-based order,
The
coastal
global
elite kind
liberal
of
regime
the
type.
liberal
Yeah.
hegemony, and who actually stands to benefit from a lot of this is maybe some of the more overtly aggressive side of the neocons, Trump's cabinet, the Netanyahus of this world, on a purely
It's like
political
the people.
analysis.
It's like the U.S. presidents who used to pay lip service to international law when invading countries,
Yeah.
versus the
The
Chad Trump.
belligerent. Yeah.
The Chad Trump says, I'm going to bring back, like, forget neo-imperialism. I'm just going to be a good old-fashioned imperialist.
Yeah. And Epstein's fall, I would not be surprised if it was actually internally orchestrated by the powers that are in control today, because he's
Yeah, because if you're celebrating this, like, oh, well, there's so much transparency in world governments, and they've revealed all the depravity happening, and there's people inside the system who are like, working in our interest. That is definitely the last thing
it's
that
a
happens.
political battle internally. It's internally a political battle. Um, I would not be surprised if, this is to, the public wants some heads, so why don't we cut off some Democrat heads before the upcoming election?
Yeah.
Maybe Epstein and the files have more incriminating stuff on them. That doesn't mean the Republican side or the right-wing side is not doing this stuff, but it's because maybe the materials on this are more incriminating for some of these guys.
Bro,
So it's like,
some of the memes coming out of it are hilarious and very telling. Like, there's one, it's like there's Donald Trump on one side, and it says, lifelong grifter being blackmailed into shilling for X lobby. And then there's Kamala Harris, which is just like, 'cause she's not in the files, and it's like, Florida or California, stop cop doing it for the love of the game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it actually makes you wonder, like, Dick Cheney is on the files, bro.
Yeah.
But Dick Cheney is still, like, just going ham on the world and destroying
You know who are not in the files?
Muslims, bro.
Muslims.
Muslims.
The Chinese.
Yeah.
And the Russians. And it is no surprise that a lot of...
Bro, Grandpa Z. Have you ever seen Grandpa Z going to elementary school and, playing with the kids and telling, bro, it's so adorable. This is the other day.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm shilling for China a little bit right now.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
he's going to an elementary school. There's all these little kids around him. He's like, you are the saplings that are going to grow into the future of our country. And
Yeah.
I'm like, brother, yes, Pakistan
Yeah.
needs some of this energy.
Absolutely, absolutely. Even with, speak in regards to Epstein's attitudes towards political Islam in general. I mean, is it not very, very telling that literally the evilest people in the world see this particular breed of politics to be the most dangerous for their hegemony? Does it not say something? And once again, this isn't to single out any group of people we have even at home over here in Pakistan, but I think we've given political Islam a bit of a bad rap. And the third part that we should be exploring is that how can we reinstitute some of this kind of thinking?
Look at just take the economic financial angle of political Islam.
Yeah.
Would the global financier class today want there to be an end to interest-based lending? Never.
Yeah.
Debt is the single most powerful instrument of control that the modern world presents you with.
That
Even
is
the ancient world
neo-slavery.
presents you with.
It's neo-slavery.
It is neo-slavery.
Yeah.
And a culture, a political system that rejects that kind of slavery, that says, go for musharaka, go for partnerships, share risk, go for true entrepreneurship as opposed to the rentier rent system, rent-seeking system, where in your sleep you're making billions of rupees, not having to do anything and not creating any value, right?
Yeah.
And the arrogance of the Jeffrey Epstein to say that these ordinary people should deal in the real world, these should be the ones creating value, right?
Yeah.
We should be creating value, and that they should be working in derivatives and financialization. That the first step to all of this financialization, which leads in a parasitic way by manipulating existing real value as opposed to creating industry, as opposed to creating jobs. That is the first step to all of that is the interest-based lending mechanism. So Pakistanis need to reject that, bro. The world needs to, the Muslim world at large needs to reject that.
Yeah.
I literally believe that if there's one issue that the Pakistani lib left and the Pakistani right wing can 100% see eye to eye about, is removing interest-based lending in Pakistan.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, not having the majority of credit creation, loans, debt in Pakistan being created through private hands. It should at the very least be state-led the way it is in China, because you do not want parasitic bankers anywhere owning your debt, because if they own your debt, they own you.
Yeah.
Then you say, oh, so you want the state owning your debt? Yes, I will have the state own my debt any day over parasitic bankers owning debt.
Yeah.
Because when parasitic bankers own your debt, right, they will lobby the state to never have a fair resolution to it.
Yeah.
If the state is the only stakeholder, you may have a fair chance, right? So in Pakistan, like for example, we were talking about this earlier. There is no long-term, you can never fix Pakistan with the current landlord class that you have. You can never fix Pakistan without land reform. And yes, Din Raat, our political, social leaders will tell us that we need to reform feudalism. Of course, you need to reform feudalism. We have the benefit of a 100-year runway where we've seen the West transition from a feudal society to one where the banks are the major landowners.
Yeah.
Because the banks own your debt, the banks own your mortgages, right? what are we doing here? Is our genius solution to say that yes, break up the feudal system and then give the banks the ownership of your debt instead?
Yeah.
Like, is that your genius solution?
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not saying don't break feudalism. I'm saying break both.
Yeah.
Right? And if you want your children and their children to own anything, to ever own a home, you need to do this ASAP, right?
Yeah.
Because if the last few years haven't been anyone evident enough to anyone with basic economic knowledge that यार banks ने बैठ के 22% पे interest खाया है doing nothing,
Yeah.
right?
Definition of a rentier class.
And then obviously you've got the IMF, which is like, the IMF is the most Jeffrey Epstein-Encoded institution on the planet.
Elaborate.
Like, yeah, bro, because it is coming to you, bro. Firstly, the IMF makes you engage in all these, in this global liberalization regime where you're selling the family silver, right? You're forced to by privatizing major assets. And yeah, people are going to come at me and say, oh, so do you want like, continuous losses from state entities? No. So in today's limited logic, it makes sense. But in the long term, even the best case resolution of an IMF program for Pakistan results in a deeply unequal economy where the parasitic banking class continues to get their free lunch and people continue to fight against an endless inflation and endless inequality. That is the best case scenario for Pakistan working out the IMF program. And I'm not saying that we should abandon it. We have no choice but to fulfill it.
Yeah.
Right? But we also need to have a long-term vision which is beyond the begging bowl.
Yeah. I mean, we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. With a lot of this stuff.
Pakistan mentioned in the Epstein files, particularly where we're referred to as China's proxy in the region. Death blow to everyone calling us a neo-imperialist Chotu, okay, for the West. And obviously there's a complicated history there. We've, there's a back and forth there. But the incredible success that Pakistan has recently had in balancing between the dominant Western camp and the rising Chinese camp is...
And also rising Neo-Ummah faction, which is, the Saudi, Turkey, Pakistan, potentially Bangladesh, potentially
Malaysia, Iran.
Yeah, potentially the current Iran regime.
Yeah. The really interesting aspect of this and where it's clearest is today in our deals on the one hand in Sudan and on the one hand in Libya. So what you've got happening in the Middle East right now is because of a rising conflict between the Saudis and the UAE. You've got two camps. Right? And the Saudis are kind of breaking away from the American camp. For the first time, you're seeing Mohammed bin Salman exerting himself in a way that a few years earlier, a lot of people didn't think was possible. Right? He's getting cozier with China. He signed a defense deal with us.
Cozier with Turkey as well, man. Like, maybe remember the Jamal Khashoggi affair? Like, that had Turkish and Saudi relations at an all-time low. And now these guys look pretty tight. Again, their interests are converging in a lot of cases.
And just opening up channels of communication with Iran is, again, a big deal. And now you're seeing Pakistan doing a bit of a geopolitical masterclass. Disclaimer, we should not, ideally be funding any kind of questionable conflict anywhere. But in Sudan, you see us selling weapons to one side of the conflict.
That is the Neo-Ummah side of the fact.
And in Libya, you see us selling arms to a completely different side. In the regional alliance.
Or aligned with the UAE, Israel, America.
That nexus. And now, all I'm going to say about that is that there are deep moral implications of that, which I do not necessarily endorse. But Pakistan acting like an important geopolitical actor and player that can also shore up its foreign exchange reserves by selling arms and becoming a major broker of power in the region is probably something that can, in the long run, allow us to actually stand on our own ideological grounds. Earlier, we weren't able to do that
Mm-hmm.
because we were too weak.
Mm-hmm.
If we can get to a point where we're strong enough, a lot of the geopolitical ends that are popular in the Muslim Ummah or the Pakistani mainstream
Yeah.
may actually be within sight, or we may actually be able to play a crucial role, right? Like, for example, us joining the peace board, Trump's peace board.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I endorse that, right? There's a lot of
Look, if this is going to happen, and it's going to happen with or without Pakistan, would you not want the single most powerful Muslim country, militarily, intelligence-wise, to be involved in anything concerning what happens to the future of the Palestinians? So from my thing with it is that people see it as a seal of approval towards, hey, we're okay with what is happening in Palestine. I don't necessarily see it as that. I see it as, look, if this is going to happen, we should get involved because we actually have a certain level of power and a certain level of military-wise to be consequential, push comes to shove.
From a purely geopolitical calculation, yes. I think Pakistan, being the kind of ideological country that it is,
Yeah.
should have a calculus that is even higher than that. So
Yeah.
my ideal situation is we stay involved, but with the ultimate end goal of doing more for the Palestinians than the peace board will allow. Because the peace board will allow a very limited kind of,
It's a handover, essentially. It's a handover.
and that is something that, yes, it is really hard for me at the end of the day to swallow that pill of us being party to something like that. I'm not saying from geopolitical perspective that it's wrong to do it,
Yeah.
but it's just really difficult.
Yeah. From a moral perspective, I agree with you. From a purely pragmatic perspective, I think that there's a lot to gain of having your own network.
And
your
without
own-
separating the moral and the pragmatic, I
Yeah.
think there is a universe in which Pakistan becomes,
Look,
stays involved, becomes a regional power broker, and then eventually, at a time, place, and through a method of our choosing,
yeah,
we do something that is
consequential.
and
But don't you
positive
think-
for the Palestinians.
But don't you think to do something consequential, you need to have a certain degree of competence in the region?
No, that's what I'm
a
saying.
Certain degree of
So for me,
know-how of the region that you can only accomplish
only
if you have some boots on the ground.
the only way you can justify joining the peace board and being a party to this egregious process is if retroactively in the future you do something that goes out of your way and it results in some betterment for Palestinians on the ground. That is my calculation. Because you can't ultimately, in a practical sense, like if you are if you're the decision maker, you can't really separate the moral and the pragmatic. Because ultimately it rests with you. So I think it needs to be eventually, it can be eventually justified. It's just, I mean, maybe it's just like
Let's
me,
see what happens.
maybe it's me moralizing too much,
Yeah.
because it is something that's close to my heart. It's close to all of our hearts.
Yeah.
But it's just really hard to watch.
Yeah, that it is.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with it.
Yeah.
I do think, though, that being said, we are doing some great work on the geopolitical angles. What I am, on a bigger picture, quite excited for, potentially quite excited for, is the new Abbasid Caliphate. What I mean by that is that if the Persians, the Arabs, and the Turks can finally look eye to eye again,
Yeah.
is that not what the Abbasid Caliphate represented at its time?
And
Work together. And here's the thing: you have so much disunity and lack of ideological unity between the Muslim world and their interests that I don't think have been kind of reconciled since the Abbasids necessarily. But we're seeing something new pop up where it's like we're kind of looking eye to eye on a lot of things. Like there's no surprise that, look, people can talk about pure pragmatic elements of partnering with, let's say, Saudi and Turkey, but the fact that Bangladesh also wants in, the fact that, there's this overt increasing chumminess with the powers that be in Iran, there's something ideological
bro,
happening.
Pakistan-Bangladesh alliance in 2026 would go really hard, not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, shout out Bangladesh for what they're doing with the World Cup. Shout out the big Mohsin. Shout out the big Mohsin as well. You love to see it.
Bro, but I will say that, look, it couldn't be less important to me. I don't know if Mohammed bin Salman is Ummah maxing like that, dude. I don't know, right?
Look,
but
yeah.
what matters to me
Yeah.
is, even if it's the geopolitical conditions that are goading him, pushing him
Yeah.
closer to us, closer to Turkey, and closer to a bloc that isn't completely aligned with the West, that's a good thing.
Here's the thing. While I share some of your sentiments that maybe it isn't ummah maxing or it isn't a sense of ideological unity, when you look at the opposing faction, like we've been talking about the Epstein thing, on the highest levels of things, things are deeply religious and things are deeply ideological for a lot of these people.
No,
Even on the other side of things,
I agree.
it's like, the secularism psyop where it's like it's only, monetary pragmatism.
Oh yeah,
That's not true.
Things are neutral.
I
Like,
think
yeah.
it's neutral.
Yeah.
It's just business. Yeah,
So-
I
so
don't think
doesn't
this.
that then mean
Yeah. Yeah.
that the way that that side conceptualizes itself as essentially spiritual or motivated by some kind of moral order,
Yeah.
that we need to do the same thing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think, look, man, here's the thing. Anyone who thinks that ideology and religious affinities and cultural affinities don't matter need to get their head out of their ass.
It's like that kind of person who thinks that, like, secularism means neutrality and that has nothing to do with, like, Protestant ethics. Like,
Not just that. Even on a deeper level, right? There's a reason why America and Europe, for the past 100 years for sure, and even beyond that, have an affinity with each other because it's mostly the same people with the same cultural values that they're all ultimately, it's a Christian civilization. It's a white Christian civilization.
they're at the
And-
very least,
Yeah.
modern secularism in the West is cultural Christianity.
Absolutely.
If it's even deeper than that, because all their moral codes are ultimately informed by Christianity, so it's
Yeah.
not just cultural
Yeah.
Christianity. But even I remember, I was in Montreal once, and there was a lot of controversy over Muslim women wearing the veil
Yeah.
and the hijab in public institutions.
Yeah.
And one MP in the Quebec Parliament was questioned about it, and he said, and they're like, "Yo, in the Parliament, you've got, like, these statues of Jesus, and all of these Christian symbols.
Yeah.
So why are those Christian symbols okay, and why is the hijab not okay if you're a secular country?"
Yeah.
It's like, well, we're culturally Christian at the end of the day.
Yeah.
This is our culture. right?
Absolutely.
So
That gives you
so secularism all over the world perceives itself to be culturally, ethically, ultimately aligned with a certain civilization.
Yeah.
Yet, there's a class of people
Hmm.
in the East, in the Muslim world and beyond, that wants to class itself as something that is essentially stale, corporate, and neutral, which just
Yeah.
does not exist, of course.
It doesn't exist. I mean, look, when interests end, right, ideology can come in. There's a reason why, bro. Pakistan and Turkey, we don't have any immediate need for each other and have not had any immediate need for each other the way we have, like, say, for China, the way we have had, say, from America. But there's still a deep level of attachment we have towards the Turks, in the sense that they were the last time, there was a caliphate type of model.
1920s Caliphate movement happened in the
Absolutely.
subcontinent. Yeah.
Even when interests don't align, there is ideological affinity between those two countries. Even with Saudi Arabia, there is ideological affinity, and you can't ignore those. So while I do think pragmatism is important and being rational about what are my economic interests and stuff are important, I think push comes to shove, the countries that are ideologically aligned with each other have really, really long-term partnerships. There's no surprise that Britain and America have been chuddy buddies for
Yeah.
God knows how long, even though
Yeah.
they have a bloody past. It's like ultimately they see the world the same way. They have the same viewpoint of the world.
Bro, US and
And-
Israel, bro.
Yeah.
US and Israel.
Yeah.
They've got no essential geopolitical affinity.
Yeah.
But because they've got similar ends, I mean,
Yeah.
yes, a lot of those are pragmatic ends.
Yeah.
But it's all undergirded
ideological
by a
similar-
shared ideological view of the world.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
And without that,
Yeah.
they would not be as chummy as they are.
Yep, absolutely. And then what's fascinating in all of this is the China angle. Because China, although has historically been isolationist, the people that they have actually worked well with throughout history is this Middle Eastern belt. Because historically,
Trade with the Abbasids?
they trade with the Abbasids, and we had a common enemy, which was the Mongols.
Yeah.
Both the Islamic civilization and the Chinese civilization are like, hey, we are united in our disdain for the Mongols, let's say. there was always a mutual respect between these civilizations. There's similarities in their cultural values and our cultural values as well. So it makes sense that long term, you don't see big Muslim Chinese wars. It's mostly been we're at peace with each other, and we quite a lot of the time we've worked with each other. So I think the most sensible alignment going forward is like the Middle Eastern, the Neo Ummah belt. China makes all the sense in the world. They need something from us. We need something from them. There's a pragmatic element there as well. Russia's a wild card.
But all that being said, we should still play both sides for as long as possible.
Absolutely, absolutely. Benefit, profit.
Because
you can.
we don't want to be China side, America side. We want to be Pakistan side.
Absolutely. Pakistan side, Muslim side.
Yeah.
That's what ultimately matters. But if there was a coalition to be forming, this is the sensible one.
I agree. I agree.
This is a sensible one.
Like that's why I think that, for example, when I mentioned that Pakistan mentioned the Epstein files as a proxy of China.
Yeah.
Do they not know that we're in an IMF program? Do
Yeah.
they not know that we're heavily dependent on the West, majorly as an export destination?
Yeah.
I think the EU and America together make up like some ridiculous, like 30-40% of our export destinations.
Yeah.
Some ridiculous amount. They know all these things.
Yeah.
So they know we've got this deep integration. They know that we've been very close,
Yeah.
too close to the West in the past, yet they still refer to us as a proxy of China. Why? Because even they know that because of geopolitical
realities of the region.
Exactly, because of necessities, realities, eventually we've got our final fate probably with the Chinese side.
Yeah, absolutely. What's interesting to me in this entire analysis is India. Because from a pragmatic level, it makes all the sense in India to all the sense in the world for India to get along with China and with Pakistan. Because then what happens is that you see India long term kind of being isolated in the region. Because if Bangladesh, if China, and if Pakistan, and if you've got an entire assortment of all these guys, like, the Saudis and the Turkeys of the world, kind of on the same page or something, where does that leave India? So there's an Indian question there as well. But on an ideological level, of course, there is some resentment on the Hindu side towards the Muslim side, and I can sympathize with their worldview as well to a certain degree. Like, let's leave the India trolling out for a second.
Yeah.
So my question is, like, what makes sense for India in
Bro,
this practice? I don't know where they fit, because I don't think they fit seamlessly in with the American, the Anglo-American establishment side of things.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense for them, even pragmatically, even culturally. I don't
They
think
should kind of be. They should kind of be doing what we're doing, which is trying to get along with both.
Yeah.
There's no essential reason that they shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah.
But
I think the best form, I think the best permutation of India I can think of is an India that actually settles its differences with Pakistan, settles its stuff with Bangladesh. Listen, China, you're obviously the big boy in the region. You do your thing. And I think India would be stronger than ever. Like
bro,
that.
I especially like as a Pakistani nerd.
Yeah.
I have such a deep appreciation for India's intellectual landscape, the journalistic landscape.
Absolutely.
These are not. This is not an ordinary group of people.
Yeah.
Yet your chief public intellectual in a way is like Arnab Goswami. Like that's what people know you as, right? And that says something about that society still, where you've got such a strong tradition of reasonable people who, despite being hawkish towards Pakistan, still see an essential value in getting along at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the reasonable position to have for us as well. Where yes, there's deep suspicion on both sides, right? I think they've done us wrong on many occasions. I think they still do.
Yeah.
Does that ever mean
they probably have the same statement about
with
us,
right?
But there's no right or wrong.
Yeah. Does that essentially change the geopolitical reality of us just having to get along? I don't think it does. In the same statement, you can say that we've got all these problems, yet we need to fix them.
Yeah.
There's nothing contradictory or unnatural about that.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I think even when it comes to the jingoism, the Hindutva jingoism, there's also an element of like, you've got to sympathize with the Hindu civilization to a certain degree, because the past 1,000 years have basically been characterized by them kind of being invaded by a stronger force in a way. Like, you had the Mughals, the Muslims, the invaders from the West come in, they do it. Once the Muslim hegemony gets weak in the region, the British come in and the British do the exact same thing. So I can, like, we talk about China's century of humiliation. India's kind of had 1,000 years of humiliation, the local populace, in the sense that they haven't been afforded the right to self-determination in a lot of ways. And it makes sense with this newfound power and newfound cultural
they got
vigor.
motion, bro.
They've got motion, there's no doubt, and it makes sense for them to want to assert themselves after, like, eons of some more humiliation.
And they also-
I sympathize, and honestly, I sympathize with that. It makes sense. Like, imagine you're like a nerd in school, and it's like you have a glow up, and now you want to, like, now you want to dunk on the people who used to bully you.
Yeah.
I can understand where India even comes from this, but I don't know at what point it's like, okay, it's time to let some of that baggage go to a certain degree.
Bro,
And-
they're like unnecessarily petty with Pakistan, right? They're like trying to finger us on every forum. They're trying to finger us with the basmati rice stuff,
Yeah.
They're the
I think it
allegations.
comes down to it. It's like a millennia of humiliation that they've kind of gone through.
The allegations of terrorism, which I think it could not be less credible, right? And I think that anyone outside of India kind of knows that it is not in Pakistan's interest to do this kind of only in their country. Right?
Yeah.
We're not.
They're a lot more powerful. Like, let's be frank here. They're a lot more powerful.
So you
than
can
us.
be,
They've
you can
done
be
a
like the
great job.
classic, you can be like the more classy big brother in the region where you're like, okay, like we can move past this now. But despite all this motion that you have, you're still petty with Pakistan.
That's something. I think there is a deep sense of insecurity in that civilization that it's gonna take some time for them to get past. They need to have some really substantial. They need to have some real substantial wins in their collective psyches to do that. And I think for them, the most sensible win that they can have is against the Muslims of the subcontinent, which is, like, let's say the Bengalis and the Pakistanis.
Bro, but you know what? As a Pakistan maxer,
Yeah.
the Hindutva India
Yeah.
and our civil military leadership's pan-Islamic sentiments that often come up
Yeah.
are, on the one hand, likely to get into tussles and get into altercations like we did last year. They are also the most likely to make long-term peace because they are. Modi can make peace with Pakistan because he won't be called a traitor to Hindutva because he represents Hindutva.
Yeah.
A Pakistani leadership that stands by pan-Islamic ideals or Pakistan maxing ideals
Yeah.
is less likely to be called a traitor for making peace with India if they have those elements truly about them.
Yeah.
So while it potentiates conflict the most, having these kinds of people in power,
Yeah.
it also potentiates long-term serious peace more than anyone else.
Because they represent the furthest extremes of the country's expansionist tendencies.
Exactly. So if the
I get that, I get that.
ideologues
Yeah.
if the ideologues make peace,
Yeah.
if the liberals ever coming into power, like bro, Rahul Gandhi cannot make peace with Pakistan without being called Deshdrohi or whatever they call that, right?
Yeah.
Rahul Gandhi is immediately anti-national,
Yeah,
as they call it, right? The same way, someone like on the geopolitical stage, like a Bilawal Bhutto, cannot go and make peace with India without being called a traitor.
Yeah.
Right?
A democratically elected
It's difficult.
Government in Pakistan cannot go make, like,
It's
tough for them.
it's
You
tough.
need the furthest end of the extreme, which is our military establishment and their Hindutva thing to kind of sit down and
Ideally, you need like a broad national consensus,
Yeah.
which includes the ideologues and the moderates, which goes and says that, if we could exist as one country, we can definitely coexist
Yeah.
at the very least.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Yeah. So that's the India calculus in the entire thing. Yeah, it doesn't, like, now idhar ke na udhar ke lagte hain. So it just makes sense for them to be pragmatic. Keep winning in your borders. Keep winning with whatever you're doing because you have motion, no doubt about it, man. Keep winning. Play it pragmatic is basically what I get towards.
And like, dude, you know what? I don't. I really think that there's a big disparity in intellectual charity and honesty in the Indian mainstream and the Pakistani mainstream towards each other. Like, I think Pakistanis and the Pakistani media is a lot more willing to acknowledge the motion that India has. Whereas whenever Pakistan has some kind of even small win, uh, they're talking down to us. They're talking down to us, bro.
Once again, I
You
feel
know?
like even with media, right, with the country's national media, these are reflection of the country psyche. Like, you know how we see all these memes about how algorithm is evil. Algorithm is like, bro, no, I'm just a mirror of your own self-reflection. Media is the same way. Like, established media is the same way. It's like the Indian public buys this because I do think on a collective psyche level, there is a bit of a millennia of humiliation they want to get past. We don't have this necessarily the same baggages because we as Pakistanis, like, what is our attitude towards
I actually
like, what is our attitude towards the entire India thing? Our attitude is like, you got motion, great, you're pretty sick, but we don't have a collective insecurity about it
don't.
because we come
We
from
don't.
this place of, yaar, 400-500 साल के लिए तो आप पे हमने राज किया है.
Yeah.
We did rule over for a long time and good for you.
Yeah.
So you don't have the same degree of insecurity with the Muslims as the Hindus do with the Muslims of the region because we have a long legacy of, kind of being the big brother in the region.
Because because Pakistanis will perceive themselves as ideological offsprings of the Mughals.
Yeah.
And the Indians, and whether this actually or not is debatable, but the Indians will perceive themselves, the Hindutva Maxers will perceive themselves as offspring of those that the Mughals ruled over, and that they think were
They
wrong
want
by the Mughals.
retribution in a certain way. So, but once again, I can empathize with that worldview for them. I like, trolling aside, I can empathize with that worldview for them. It's probably tough, That being said, your best bet is still to just make up.
Always will be.
Yeah.
Can't change.
You can't, there's too many of us for you to really be able to defeat. We've got a very, very heavy underwriter right to the north of you who has his own issues with you. You're better.
Unlimited PL-15s, bro.
Yeah, you are better off kind of making up with us. And honestly, and in your own domestic front, in your international fronts, keep winning, bro. Keep doing you, bro.
There's
Keep shining, bro.
There's so much to lose for the kind of impoverished classes that both India and Pakistan have for our leaderships to have an ego about making up.
Yeah.
Right. And I really do think that our balance over the last even decade and our attitude towards India has been really defensible and solid. Because jahan zarurat padi hai, we've been hawkish. We've given them the jawabs of a lifetime.
Yeah.
We've given them a serious run for their money in our altercations. At the same time, we've never shied away from peaceful overtures and saying that essentially, due to geopolitical, geoeconomic realities, we do need to make up with our neighbor.
Yeah.
And that is how it needs to be.
Yeah,
in peace, be as forthcoming as possible, as much as your dignity allows you, and in war, be as aggressive as possible.
Yeah, I agree with you.
The burger shop is for the kids, bro.
It is, man. I actually, like, whenever we go out somewhere, right? At least when I go out somewhere, the people who always have the kindest words to say about it, it's like the Zoomers. Like, the kids still in school, in high school, in O levels. It's like they really, really dig what we do. And that was it. Even when we started this, we wanted them as our like target audience, but seeing it play out in real time is quite fulfilling.
What I found really interesting is I've had a bunch of people come up to me, like, not the demographic I expected at all.
Yeah.
Like 16, 17-year-old girls.
Yeah.
I like restaurants. Like, a group of them came up to you and they're like, oh,
Yeah.
like, you really like what you're doing? I was like, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
But it was really sweet.
Yeah.
But I really think that it makes sense.
Yeah. Why do you think so?
They don't have the same kind of pretensions and the filters that a lot of the millennials and even Gen Zs,
Older Gen Zs. My
do.
cohort.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
cohort, really. Yeah.
So I think that you see more of a split on the older end.
Yeah.
And it's not even always based on the content of what we're saying. Sometimes it's the aesthetics.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the way we're saying things.
Yeah.
And I think the way we're saying things is a particularly contentious thing because sometimes people are like, oh, you sound obnoxious or this or that. And then the younger kids, they're all just like, they know we're like messing around. We're
Yeah.
like trolling. We're doing a bit of trolling. We're doing a bit of fucking around. And the kids get it.
Yeah.
The unks don't get it.
Unks don't get it at all. And with the kids even, right, when you look at them, their culture it's so diverse. When I compare ours to theirs, it's like, they've got all types of cool stuff going on. And shout out them in the sense that, bro, when I look at like the younger cohorts of Gen Z and stuff, they're much smarter than we were. I actually actively think that the average IQ and the average intelligence of a 22-year-old is going to be higher than a 32-year-old in Pakistan. I swear, they're a lot more open-minded. They're a lot less judgmental about a lot of things, and I think a lot of them are also a lot more buttoned down in terms of what they want. Like, I'll give you an example. I go to the gym. 90% of people I see at the gym are like zoomers with mushroom haircuts, and they're going hard as hell. They're strong as hell. Like, I was never that strong at that age, that advanced, that quickly. And sometimes like I feel like an unk. They ask me, yo, am I squatting correctly, or how did you build up your strength to be like lifting this much X amount of weight or whatever? And they come from this very, very like, they want to learn, they want to know, and I love like, giving them advice wherever I can. I like the fact that, a lot of them like what we do. And honestly, I find Zoomer culture cool, bro. Not gonna lie, I find Zoomer culture cool as fuck.
The funny that the post woke.
Yeah.
Like they care about things.
Yeah.
But not in like a loser way.
Yeah.
Like I feel like they actually care about.
They actually care. It's not like a status symbol to say I care about this XYZ social justice for them. I feel like when they're involved,
like there's less story posting and more like I'm actually trying to do something myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like their activism is not performative in a lot of ways. I feel like their activism is a lot more. It's sincere.
You don't hear that weird like empathy speak like.
Yeah.
Oh, there's no culture of like, I'm not gonna take anyone's shit. You should cut everyone off. Like I don't see them like as deep in that idiotic rabbit hole.
Yeah. And I also think that when I see with the younger cohorts, right, they're a lot more interested in a much vaster array of things. It's like I've had times where I've sat down with like the Pakistani Gen Z and I've talked about politics for hours. I've talked about like philosophy. Sometimes they ask me like, about philosophy. I have nice philosophical discussions with them, which honestly, I kind of lack in the older generation a little bit. They're kind of stale compared to these.
And I think what people don't appreciate is that if you've got this very politically correct filter thing going on, right? It really does affect your ability to think and talk to people.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
So when you're talking to a 30-something or a 25 plus anyone who's just like, grown up on slogans of certain types of liberal democracy and this and that, they do not have the capacity for a post-political imagination.
No,
right?
absolutely not.
They know that they're
trapped by their own beliefs.
And whatever binary was prevalent at the time and what was the meta when they were growing up, they're still attached to those institutions. They're still watching mainstream electronic media as opposed to more independent creators on the internet.
Absolutely.
Right? Like the burger shop.
Like the burger shop. Shout out us.
But with the kids, I feel like they do not feel the same kind of pressure to conform.
Absolutely.
They're not living in the BBC, in the CNN, Fox News, or the locally Geo News ARY binary.
No,
okay?
absolutely not.
Like they're not about that.
Yeah.
So I feel like obviously they're younger, so there's a bit of like polishing to do.
Yeah.
But the final product, to use Iqbal's language, when they go from being a lump of coal to a diamond, I feel like it'll be a much more refined and beneficial for Pakistan.
Absolutely. And I actually see a lot of diversity of thought in them. The main thing is that like, if you speak to a certain cohort in like my age group and above, you could kind of predict all of their opinions based upon what
if you know 2 things about them, you know the next 10 things about them.
Absolutely. I don't see this with the younger generation. They're a lot more unpredictable in their opinion. They're a lot more authentic in what they like, and I think that's also a benefit of the culture they grew up in, where it's like you go this post-truth society thing where it's like, hey, listen, nothing is determined, nothing is objective, so I can kind of pick and choose what I want, and I see that with them.
And bro, like even like the lefty commie type kids, they're all like, we love Stalin, we love like Thomas Sankara, okay? They're not like, we love the UN and the global liberal order. Like that's not them.
Yeah.
They're not like pretentious and weird about it. They're hardcore.
Yeah.
And I think that is what we need more of in our politics.
Absolutely. I actually want to see a lot more younger voices. Like, if there's one thing that I hope the burger shop manages to do, it's to inspire more of, kooky Gen Z kids to come out and talk, because I
Based
guarantee
lefties and schizo righties.
get me some based lefties and some schizo righties on the Pakistan IG scene, bro.
Yeah.
Because if I have to see one more stale 30-something talking about some 2015 slogan like inclusivity or whatever was the
Bro, what I love though
whatever
is
they were into at that time, it's like I'm gonna shoot myself.
Bro, whenever we're whenever we're about to upload a reel which we know is going to be a bit rage baity or get a bit of a reaction, do we not always message each other before we're like, okay, this is what most of the comments are going to say? And then like word for word, 90% of the comments are exactly that. And I'm not annoyed at the fact that people are disagreeing with what we're saying. It's like,
I want you to disagree.
Yeah,
like
all of you can't have the same exact opinion about this.
Yeah.
Like that's not it.
I mean, yeah, it's the same like circuit of like 10-15,000 people in Pakistan who are like artsy and like, they're struggling artists and like, the archetype of people, and they seem to have the most problems with what we're doing. And I think it's because, they were always they had this belief that their intellectual artsy proclivities will one day have them recognized as the brilliant artists they are, and that kind of hasn't worked out for a lot of them. And I think it really grates them the wrong way when it's like we come on without any agenda as like a side hustle, and we've got motion. What can we say? People actually like what we have to say, and whether you disagree with us or agree with us, you can't deny the fact that there's something depth, there's something authentic about us.
To realize that you can see, like, we've got so many people who were critics, then were fans, and go back and forth.
Yeah.
But they have the maturity to be like, yo, it is possible, actually. Did you know, as a consumer of media, you have the option to not form an opinion about someone through 90 seconds of video?
Absolutely.
And to engage with ideas rather than people.
Absolutely.
I love that you put us on this pedestal where, you make it about us.
Yeah.
But if you cared about things and phenomena and your country and people, as opposed to, I'm going to get my bharas and my anger out in the comment section, right? You might actually contribute towards something meaningful and positive. But of course, that's not the concern that most people have.
I mean, be that as it may, right? I think, like, I don't even mind clearing the air on one thing, which is that, listen, the goal of the burger shop, ultimately, the ideological telos, the meat and bones of the burger shop is that, we think that there is a lack of actual critical conversation in the Pakistani space. People kind of talk about the same 3-4 things. You've got your political talk, which is just is party ne ye kiya or is party
Partybazi.
And on the other hand of the spectrum, where you actually have like culturally, artistically inclined people, there's kind of a staleness in their worldviews where there's not really real much innovation, intellectual innovation going on over there.
But there's literally like there's more diversity of thought in like Pakistani madrasas because they belong to different schools of thought and different sects than there is in like the Libby lefty hegemony.
Perhaps, but I mean, that being said, like, I don't want to. Point is, we're not trying to like isolate anyone. You'll see many of our reels in which we are criticizing toxic masculinity, and then we are going to be being pro Ummah, pro Islam, and then we'll be pro China, and then
those things,
we will be
if you're not
social redistribution. So,
but if you're not ideologically captured by a certain side, you won't see those things as contradictory because they're not.
Yeah, they really aren't. Like, I can praise leftism and rightism. I can praise egalitarianism and
natural aristocracy, like all of those things.
There's truth to all of these viewpoints. And coming back to it, the telos, the ideological goal of the burger shop is that we need to facilitate actual conversations. We need to stop looking at things in these stupid binaries of black and white, and we need to actually think about some of these topics. And once again, this is the shout out to anybody who actually wants to come on the burger shop. We have no issues talking to anyone whatsoever.
Literally ever,
If you are the furthest end of a lefty to an absolute rightoid to an absolute, like, Molvi, bro, we will talk to anyone. We're
Bro,
comfortable with all of
Shout
it.
out to people
Yeah,
who have, I've noticed,
yeah,
often the people with the most severe disagreements with us
yeah,
actually voice them the most respectfully.
absolutely.
And it's like a lot of other people just leave like, innocuous feedback.
Yeah.
Bro, do we not regularly in our messages and our comments engage with people who we probably agree with on nothing?
Yeah.
But they're like
Absolutely.
giving us some really interesting
Like
feedback.
we've got some great conversations going on in our DMs with like fans or even critics. It's like, do you think we're wrong about this? That's fine. Like
Yeah.
I'm not claiming to be any authority on something. It's just why can't we actually have like fun conversations about different things? It's just that's literally the point of the burger shop. Once again, no matter who you are, no matter which faction or side you identify with, I'm willing to talk to any of you.
Real?
Yeah. And shout out Gen Z, they kind of get that.